The Panos Skordi Encounter.
Hi, this is Panos Skordi here with Mike, Tong, and Fred, who are experts in the IFM subject. And they're going to give us some tips on how to navigate passing IFM. So I'd like to welcome you guys.
Thanks.
So can I start off, guys, by asking you, what is your background?
I am FM and IFM coach here at Coaching Actuaries, and I actually am a proud Panther alumni. I graduated from UW-Wonky, but not with an actuarial science degree, with an English degree. So I graduated both undergraduate and graduate in English. So I worked at a university afterwards for about 8 years in an academic support department. And then I had a coworker that was just taking these things called actuarial exams. You know, I started just really kind of loving the math and business side of things. And so I took some exams and I passed. And then when I was looking for opportunities, you know, to change careers, I thought, well, why not check with my beloved exam provider, which was Coaching Actuaries. And, you know, I was just blessed with an opportunity here, and I've been here for about 5 years.
Hi, my name is Tong, and I'm one of the product managers at Coaching Actuaries, managing several actuarial exams. And I mostly manage the business-related actuarial exams. I also teach several actuarial science courses at Drake.
And I'm Mike Carmody. I'm the IFM instructor at Coaching Actuaries and also instruct on some of the VE courses we have at Coaching Actuaries. I've been an actuary for 30 years, graduated in 1991. Started out my career working at a couple insurance companies in Louisville, Kentucky and Des Moines, Iowa. Then moved on from the insurance world to the consulting world. Started my own business, spent a lot of time teaching seminars, helping actuaries pass exams, starting out on the upper level exams. And then recently at Coaching Actuaries, still in the education space, trying to help people pass these difficult exams.
All right, so you guys have got great varied backgrounds and all committed to the cause. So what is IFM about, and how would an actuarial student benefit from taking this exam, or at least studying the material?
Yeah, IFM really is a blend of two different exams. So it's corporate finance and derivatives. So it's really like taking almost two exams, but you really get a lot of good information from a financial perspective that sometimes actuaries don't get naturally. But it's very important for actuaries to understand the asset side along with the liability side of the balance sheet. So in IFM, you're going to understand corporate finance, just how companies are financed, how they can choose the best financing route to go. And then on derivatives, which are just instrumental in insurance companies and other places that actuaries work, because it's so important for companies to hedge their risk. And one way they like to hedge their risk is with derivatives. So it's important for actuaries to understand that.
So what are some real world applications of the IFM material?
Yeah, I think there's lots of real world applications for IFM. I think it's one of the best actuarial exams out there in terms of just those real world applications. So for example, there's many insurance companies that sell indexed annuity products. Those are products that are tied to something like the S&P 500. When insurance companies sell those products, they need to hedge away that risk. One way they do that is using derivatives. So you got to figure out what derivatives can the insurance company purchase so that they can offset the risk that they're offering in the products to the customers. And that's where actuaries step in, is they can determine what are the best products to purchase on the derivative side. And then also these derivatives have to get adjusted every day. So you're always trying to manage your exposures. You're running lots of very complicated models to make sure the insurance company is okay, to make sure they're going to fulfill their obligations. And to stay solvent. So that's why it's super important in that world. So definitely some real world applications with IFM.
So having said that, would you say that IFM is a hard exam?
All exams are hard to a various degree. In general, the overall sentiment is IFM is a relatively harder exam than P and FM, in that the amount of material covered in this exam is significantly more. Also, there's a good amount of qualitative questions in this exam that do not require calculations, but they do require a solid conceptual understanding of the material. So some actual students who are more comfortable with calculation type questions, they become less comfortable with these conceptual type questions. So they find these conceptual type questions challenging.
All right. So is it a computer-based exam or is it traditional paper and pencil?
In most countries, the exam is administered as a computer-based test.
So where do the students actually take the exam?
The exam is administered at prometric testing center. In some countries where prometric testing centers are not available, paper and pencil options may be available at a SOA designated location.
So how often is the exam offered?
The exam is offered 3 times a year, usually in March, July, and November.
And how long is the duration of the exam?
It's a 3-hour exam.
And how many questions are there on the exam, and does this vary?
There are 30 questions on the exam, and that's always fixed. It's been fixed for a long time, and it will be so in the foreseeable future.
How is it scored?
It's scored immediately if you're sitting for CBT, and it's about a 72% pass rate. So you need about 22 questions out of 30 to pass.
Okay. And how quickly after you've taken the exam do you know if you've passed or not passed?
You can find out immediately if it's CBT, that's unofficial results. And then if you're written, that's going to be about 6 to 8 weeks afterwards to get official results of passing.
Okay. So what is the pass rate?
The pass rate is about 50 to 55% in the past few sittings. So that's a really kind of a good range as to passing.
And is supposing a student is unfortunate and doesn't pass the exam, do they have to wait a certain amount of time before they take the exam again?
They do not. They can just go ahead and sign up again for the next sitting.
And is there a maximum number of times that a student can take an exam?
Like Fred suggested, if a student does not pass the exam, then the students can register again to take the exam again in the next available sitting. In general, you can keep taking exam if you do not pass the exam, and there's no limit to that.
So there's obviously other exams too. There's FM, there's P, there's IFM, there's a whole bunch of exams. How early should a student consider taking IFM in the sequence of exams?
Typically, students would consider taking IFM after they have passed both P and FM.
Okay. And does it make a difference if you take IFM with the Society of Actuaries or the Casualty Actuarial Society, the CAS?
No, it does not matter, at least at the current time. The Society of Actuaries is the society that offers the exam. The CAS does not offer that exam themselves, and you can get credit for that exam by passing the exam offered by the SOA.
And where can students get the study material from?
I may be a bit biased, but I think the students ought to go straight to Coaching Actuaries to get study materials. We've got some great online manuals, video lessons, practice questions with video solutions, great customer support from our coaches that can answer your questions. So I think it's really a great place to go and study to prepare for this exam.
Do you know, well, you guys do know, but are students allowed calculators during the exam?
Yes, calculators are allowed during the exam. For this exam specifically, we recommend 2 calculators, the Texas Instrument 30XX Multiview and also BA2 Plus.
And are students allowed anything else on the exam, such as Excel, cheat sheets, or formula sheets?
No, you cannot use Excel or your formula sheets, but you'll be provided some scratch papers and pens. And for this exam, you will also be provided a brief formula sheet by the SOA. That formula sheet is available on the SOA IFM syllabus.
What is the registration process?
You'll log into your SOA site, and then you'll select the date, and you'll make your payment. And then within 24 hours, you'll get an email from the SOA with the candidate number. And then you go ahead and use that and schedule that at your favorite prometric center.
And do you know what the cost of taking the exam is?
The current cost is $350 for non-students and $300 for students. So there is a discount if you are currently a student.
Let's look at how to prepare for the exam. How would you guys recommend that students prepare for the exam?
Yeah, I think preparing for IFM is somewhat similar to preparing for other exams. You first need to go through the material so that you can understand it. So you're going to go through and read the material. You're going to watch video lessons or live lessons on the material. And then also work some practice problems to make sure you really understand it. But that's the first part, is to get that understanding. Then as you move through that study process, you want to get more efficient at answering the questions. So really looking at how do they like to structure the questions for this part of the syllabus, and just do enough of those practice questions so you get very well versed in that. So at the beginning, it's really focusing on learning. Then towards the end, it's focusing on making sure you're ready to answer the right questions for the exam.
And would you say it involves a lot of calculus?
I wouldn't say it involves a lot of calculus, although calculus is really underpinning a lot of the material that's in IFM. You don't have to have an in-depth knowledge of calculus to be able to do that, as long as you're probably familiar with derivatives and just understanding conceptually what that is. You would have a pretty good grasp of how things are being derived in IFM.
What skills does a student need to pass IFM?
I think probably the biggest skill they need in passing IFM is just discipline and dedication. And that's true for a lot of the actuarial exams, that you have to put the time in, even if you understand the material a little bit because you had the class in college or you work in that area. That doesn't mean you're equipped to pass the exam. So you really got to put in that time and just make sure that you're really ready to answer the questions that they're going to throw at you on the exam.
Would you say it's best to have a regular routine in terms of study times during the week?
Yeah, I think that is super important in studying for IFM and other actuarial exams, is that you actually build out a schedule at the beginning. You specify when you're going to get to certain milestones in your study process. And you need to lay that out because you're going to be studying for maybe 3 months, 4 months for this exam. And so that's a lot of days that you're involved in your preparation. So you want to make sure you're doing the most on each day in the study cycle to maximize your chances of passing that exam. So definitely make that plan, stay disciplined on it, and just be committed to passing the exam.
So other than a weekly plan, would you say that students should have a detailed timetable from day one through to the exam day of actually taking the exam?
Yeah, I definitely think they need that detailed plan, because at different points in your study process, you're going to be focused on different things. Like I said, at the beginning part of the study process, you're really looking at how can I understand the material, just digest it. Then as you get towards the end, it's really focusing on, can I answer the question as they're going to ask them? Can I memorize certain formulas that I'm going to need on the exam? So it really is going to vary by stage you are in the study process. You need to have that daily schedule because the exam date is going to come. So you know that's going to be at the end. So you have got to work backwards from that date to build out the right schedule. Now, life's going to happen along the way. And so your schedule that you lay out is not perfectly going to be implemented. So you can't panic about that. But if you get behind for a couple of days for some reason, then you just know that you got to study a little bit more a few days after that. So be flexible in that regard, but don't be a procrastinator and think that I'll just wait until a couple of weeks before the exam and then pass the exam. You've got to stay disciplined all the way through the process.
All right. So how much total time would you say should be spent preparing to take subject IFM?
3 to 4 months is a pretty common time frame to prepare for this exam.
Okay. And how would you say your time or students' time should be split between studying the material and practicing past questions?
Assuming you have 4 months to prepare for this exam, we suggest learning the material in the first 3 months and then dedicate the last month on practicing and reviewing the material.
Okay. And do you guys have any other tips on how to successfully navigate exam IFM and passing it, getting the best result?
I'll start, as Coach Mike was saying, just study early and study hard. And no matter what, stick with it and you'll get the result you want.
Okay. Does anyone else have any other tips for that?
Yeah, I would echo what Fred said on that, study early, study often. Also, I would encourage you to not just go through the motions. Sometimes you can say, I'm going to study for an hour or two this day, but if you're just sitting there with the book open or the computer open, putting in your time, but not really focusing, it's not worth it. You might as well go do something fun. So when you are going to study, make sure you're really disciplined, you're really focused, and you're getting some good out of it.
Other tips that I would provide is use the learning objectives published by the SOA and make sure that the understanding of the material is in line with what the SOA wants the candidate to learn. Another thing is for derivatives, some math can be tough when you are exposed to the material for the first time, but just know that it will get better over time with practice. And then with the corporate finance material, there is a lot of qualitative material. Focus on understanding the concepts and then review the material several times to make sure that the concepts click.
That's just great tips from Mike, Tong, and Fred. I'd like to thank you for coming on the Panos Skordi Encounter. We're going to include the description. In the description, we'll include your details, links to websites, emails, etc. And this has been your host, Panos Skordi, on the Panos Skordi Encounter. Take care wherever you are.